Even when a man went to the toilet, they'd check to see if he was genuine or just wanted to slip off work for a chat. And if he did stop to chat and a guard came by or the manager and caught him there in the toilet, he'd be fired. There was nothing you could do about it.
Workers were called out to welcome their leader to Turin. Motor engineering and design represented national prestige and dynamism, and Mussolini took a close interest in what the assembly lines could do for fascism. Italians were offered a national system of workers' clubs and recreational facilities instead of unions and conflict. The communal benefits were meant to substitute for the larger individual pay packets workers had heard about from immigrants to America. Even in the communist Soviet Union, now attempting a rapid industrialization, engineers studied the arch-capitalist Henry Ford's methods to help get the output Stalin's planners demanded. Tractors and trucks were needed to build socialism, not cars. But the new factories that rolled them out in ever-increasing numbers were planned on Detroit lines with advice from Ford engineers. In America itself, the new consumer society had begun to turn sour after the Great Depression put nearly 14 million out of work. At first, the car companies managed to keep going, and unemployed men from all over the country converged on Detroit, hoping they could still find work there. Thousands waited outside the River Rouge plant. Paul Botin, already laid off once, waited along with the rest to get his old job back.
People stayed and stayed and stayed in desperation, and when you looked into their eyes, and you thought maybe that's what you look like, as you saw in the eyes of the others despair, you thought maybe you look like that to them.
Even those who counted themselves lucky still to be in work saw their conditions worsen. The line was run faster. Workers were put on short time and rates of pay were cut.
The superintendent called us to the desk one at a time and told us we were working for 50 cents an hour, no matter what you were making. If you were making $1 an hour, you went down to 50 cents an hour.
Things were getting so bad, all the pressures of the line without the high pay to compensate, that workers began listening to recruiters from the emerging car workers union.
I met a guy by the name of Bill Mackay. And he says, we're going to get a union in this place. What the hell is a union, you know? He said, well, these foremen won't have to be standing over. But anyway, Bill gave me some literature, and he said, don't let anybody see this. Put it in your pocket and read it when you get home, you know. And I put it in my shirt pocket. Later on, I went home that next morning, went to reading about it and everything. So that's how I got involved in the union.
With so much unemployment, the union organizers found recruiting hard. Then in 1932, the River Rouge factory virtually stopped production. The closures provoked a clash between workers and the company that was to provide a legend for the labor movement.
Out of many meetings and many discussions, it was decided that they would have a hunger march on Ford to let Ford know that he'd promised us $5 a day and he'd closed the plant without any explanation whatsoever. Now, we had got permission to march through Detroit.
When we got to this corner here, Miller and Dix, the fireworks started. Hoses started to pour ice water on top of us, and there was a cordon of police right across Miller Road proper, acting as a barricade. Right in this spot in here, there were piles of coal. And some of the people got on top of the piles of coal, and they threw the coals back at the police. and at the company people on the other side of the fence. The march went on towards Gate 3, and that's where men were shot. Instead of getting jobs, we got lead, we got bullets, and blood.
Four demonstrators were shot dead by police outside the Ford plant. The Miller Road martyrs, as they were seen, helped draw public attention to the car workers' case. Washington now backed them too. There was a new Democrat government, and President Roosevelt's New Deal gave workers the legal right to have unions and collective bargaining. In 1937, the Auto Workers Union felt strong enough to take on other car companies. After a brief strike, the union was finally recognized by both General Motors and Chrysler. Only Henry Ford, the original inventor of the assembly line, still held out against the unions. When a new Ford car was launched in 1937, the promotion and salesmanship were as slick and modern as could be. Dealers were summoned to have their enthusiasm whipped up.
Gentlemen, how do you like the 1937 Ford V8?
But while the company boasted how advanced the car was, they still dealt with their workers in the same old authoritarian way. The union's tactics grew bolder.
Well, the union had a 1914 Model T Ford with a brass radiator on it, and had a great big sign on the top of it. It said, "More modern than Ford's labor policy." And I was driving it this day. We got up to the old administration building where Ford had its office, and I accidentally, on purpose, stalled it right in the driveway.
In the 27 years after the moving assembly line was first introduced, workers in other companies gradually regained some of the control they'd lost. But it wasn't until 1941 that the final showdown came at Ford. The unions had built their membership to the point where action was possible at last. After a fight broke out between a foreman and a worker, Jim Sullivan felt the moment had arrived.
So I went back and made my call. I told Mike Whitman, I said, "Mike, it's now or never. They're ready. I can take them out." One of my first acts was to go up and push a red button to stop the line. I had a foreman named Jim Barberie. He rushed over to, "What the hell you think you're doing?" So strike, strike. Everybody went to hollering, strike, strike, strike.
The world's biggest car plant ground to a halt.
I felt real good. I said, boy, I really done a job, you know? I was dancing the jig. I made history. I shut down the Ford Motor Company.
After the strike, the union had a legal contract with the company. From then on, all workers had to belong to the union. Changes to the speed of the line and work practices were to be jointly negotiated. The Ford contract, so hard won, became a model for the rest of American industry.
Toward Washington, D.C. in 1941, millions of U.S. citizens are looking anxiously for leadership in the greatest armament program of their nation's history. For not only must...
The Second World War put new demands on the assembly lines. The days when managers dictated the terms were now over, and with labor so scarce, the balance of power in the factories shifted. America and its allies needed even greater output.